cycle of impunity and fear. The CFJ Sahel Human Rights Review, April to October 2025, documents widespread violations of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, from extrajudicial ex executions and arbitrary arrest to torture, civic restrictions, and shrinking democratic spaces. While the crises are often framed as security challenges, we must remember that the erosion of rights and accountability lies at the heart of the region's instability. Rebuilding trust and justice must form the foundation of any lasting peace. Today's panel brings together courageous voices from across the region, individuals working tirelessly to defend human rights, document abuses, and promote accountability. My first speaker would be Mrs. Binta Sidibe Gasson, the Vice President of KISAL, KISAL Observatory. Mrs. Sidibe is a leading advocate for governance, accountability, and human rights monitoring in the Sahel. Through her work with KISAL Observatory, she has documented violations linked to military operations and championed community-based monitoring and civilian protection. She will share her insights on impunity, militarization, and the state of transition across the region and within the human rights framework. Mrs. Binta?
Mariana et Committee for Justice pour cette opportunité que vous nous donnez. C'est pas bon? Ah, OK. De l'opportunité que vous nous donnez de parler du Sahel. Hein. Déjà, on avait déjà pris en contact il y a quelques mois. Ce qui est difficile en fait au Sahel central, c'est que c'est d'avoir cette posture qu'on a de continuer à documenter, sans qu'aucune action concrète soit faite. Oui. Ah, au niveau de la traduction. Ah, ils ne m'entendent pas.
I could only hear the French. Yeah, two. Which channel is English? One.
C'est bon.
Translation.
Oui, donc comme je disais, donc la grande difficulté qu'on a aujourd'hui au Sahel, c'est tout ce qui est déployé en fait sur cette question de documentation. Certes, il faut documenter. On a déjà, je pense, hein, pour nous-mêmes avoir fait du monitoring et nos collègues et partenaires aussi de l'avoir fait, je pense qu'on a vraiment assez pour qu'il y ait un sursaut, pour qu'il y ait vraiment des actions concrètes sur le Sahel, pour que les exactions sur les civils cessent. Donc, on a quand même, comme je vous dis aussi, ce vide des témoins extérieurs. Tout a été fait de sorte à ce que la communauté internationale parte du Burkina, du Mali, du Niger, un peu comme on dit, circuler, il n'y a rien à voir. Pendant ce temps-là, les massacres se multiplient. Donc, il y a le vide des témoins extérieurs. La situation des droits humains est dramatique dans ces trois pays, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Les juntes ont poursuivi tout le courant 2025 hein, ce harcèlement sur les journalistes, les magistrats, les organisations internationales. Dans le cas de mon pays, le Burkina Faso, les harcèlements des ONG et des institutions onusiennes qui traditionnellement, par leur présence, dissuadent ou témoignent des violations fréquentes des droits humains dans un contexte de guerre où les acteurs sont peu soucieux de préserver la vie humaine et la dignité humaine. La junte burkinabé a chassé la représentante résidente du système des Nations Unies et procédé à la suspension de l'ONG INSO, dont la mission était de faire du monitoring sur les incidents sécuritaires à travers le pays. Le directeur de cette ONG et 7 de ses agents sont actuellement sous le coup d'une procédure judiciaire. Ce sont des données qui témoignent vraiment de la dégradation continue des droits humains et qui montrent aussi qu'auprès de ces militaires, il n'y a pas de limite, tout le monde y passe, qu'on soit représentant des Nations Unies, qu'on soit représentant d'une organisation internationale. Pour eux, tout le monde doit circuler. Donc vraiment, cette question de vide de témoins extérieurs, il faut vraiment la prendre en compte. C'est une stratégie qui est en place depuis très longtemps. On le dit, malheureusement, on n'a pas été écouté. Et il n'y a pas aussi eu une alternative qui a été mise en place au cas où tous ces témoins partent. Comment on fait pour continuer? Toujours en 2025, les exactions et les stigmatisations sur la communauté Peul ont continué, hein. On a le massacre de Solenzo au Burkina Faso, qui est qui par son ampleur et le caractère indiscriminé reste la plus grande tragédie de l'année 2025 au Burkina Faso. Et je dirais même de la sous-région, parce que ce qui s'est passé pour le massacre de Solenzo, c'est qu'enfin, sur le Sahel central, on a des images et du son. Comment les bourreaux procèdent. Les volontaires pour la défense de la patrie qui ont fait ces exactions-là ce jour-là se sont filmés avec leur smartphone en train de faire des exactions sur des femmes, sur des enfants, sur des vieillards. Fiers de leurs exactions, ils ont partagé ces vidéos après dans leur groupe WhatsApp pour inciter en fait d'autres régions du Burkina à faire la même chose. Et nous, c'est à travers des collègues qui étaient infiltrés dans ces groupes-là qu'on a pu avoir ces images-là. Donc on peut mettre, c'est triste à dire, hein, mais de mettre vraiment les images et le son, comment ça se passe. Parce qu'ils ont filmé quand ils amènent les personnes pour les exécuter, ils ont filmé aussi après qu'ils les aient exécutées. Donc, c'est des éléments très importants. Je pense que Solenzo marque vraiment un tournant. Et moi-même, ma famille ayant été ciblée au mois de mai 2024, ma sœur aînée et son enfant et mes cousines, je sais que pendant longtemps, c'est l'armée burkinabé qui les a exécutés, hein, ainsi que les milices. Pendant longtemps, dans ma tête, j'essayais de replacer cette journée type. Comment ça se passe quand l'armée burkinabé arrive devant des femmes et des enfants pour le passage à l'acte? Et ces images de Solenzo m'ont permis, moi, comme d'autres, hein, de voir vraiment ce passage à l'acte, le courage que d'autres Burkinabés ont pour mettre une arme ou tuer un de leurs compatriotes par un coup de machette et autres. Donc toujours, comme je vous disais, hein, dans un massacre systématique et indiscriminé des femmes, des enfants et des vieilles personnes ont été exécutées. Et ça, c'était lors comme je vous ai dit, le massacre de Solenzo. Tout ça, c'était sous le prétexte de cette fameuse lutte contre le terrorisme. Donc les volontaires pour la défense de la patrie du village en question, de Kouka et de Solenzo, s'en sont pris à des membres de la communauté Peul. Donc, beaucoup de personnes âgées ont été exécutées ce jour-là. Ils ont été ensuite entassés dans des triporteurs et jetés aux charognards et aux chiens, une fois qu'ils ont fini. Les volontaires pour la défense de la patrie, comme je vous ai dit, ont filmé avec leurs victimes, se sont filmés avec leurs victimes agonisantes. Des vidéos insoutenables de jeunes femmes machetées, se vidant de leur sang, leurs nourrissons, apeurés, accroupis à leurs pieds, sont soumis à un interrogatoire de leurs bourreaux. Ces massacres, qui ont tous les caractéristiques d'un génocide, n'ont donné lieu à l'ouverture d'aucune procédure judiciaire, ni sur le terrain, mais ni à l'international. C'est pour ça que je vous dis que même nous qui avons fait du monitoring, je pense que il est temps de se poser les bonnes questions. Parce que si c'est pour écouter les victimes et remplir nos rapports et les envoyer, et excusez-moi le terme, justifier nos salaires, et on peut rien faire sur le terrain pour arrêter ce nettoyage ethnique, ce génocide, je pense qu'il est temps de vraiment faire un bilan et de revoir comment on travaille. Donc, les bourreaux donc, sont libres, ils bénéficient d'une impunité totale. Ils ont été identifiés parce qu'ils se sont filmés. On a leur visage, on a ce qu'ils ont dit, on a ce qu'ils ont fait à certaines femmes avant de les exécuter. Quelque temps après, ils les ont montrés dans les charniers. Tous les éléments sont là. Malgré toutes ces preuves-là, la jeune Burkinabé a décidé de nier cette tragédie de Solenzo. Donc là, c'était vraiment pour vous donner un exemple. Malgré qu'on dise que, comme je vous ai dit, la notion circuler, il n'y a rien à voir, qu'il n'y ait plus de journalistes, qu'il n'y ait plus personne, on a réussi, enfin, à travers quand même les bourreaux qui se sont filmés fièrement, on a des éléments pour poursuivre les gens. Et tous ces éléments-là, on les a tous documentés avec les vidéos, mais pourquoi il n'y a pas de passage à l'action? Donc, il faut se poser ces questions-là. Donc, sur la question des massacres, c'est ce que je voulais vous dire sur le cas du Burkina. Ensuite, toujours dans la sous-région, ben, comme vous pouvez l'imaginer, les massacres continuent. D'ailleurs, au Burkina Faso, juste après les massacres de Solenzo, le chef d'état-major est allé voir les troupes pour leur demander dorénavant, quand vous allez sur les opérations, vous avez l'ordre de ne plus ramener vos smartphones. Donc, à côté de ça, il y a ces massacres-là, donc qui poussent les populations. Je prends toujours l'exemple de la communauté Peul, hein, parce que toutes les populations civiles au Sahel ont payé un lourd tribut. Mais la communauté Peul, il faut le reconnaître, l'admettre, a payé un lourd tribut. Donc, face à tous ces massacres-là et au rejet de la République de ces personnes, ils ont deux choix. Soit partir vers les pays limitrophes, ou soit, malheureusement, aller se réfugier auprès des groupes armés terroristes en échange du paiement d'une taxe, la zakat. Donc, il y a eu la poursuite tout courant 2025, hein, la poursuite des déplacements internes et à l'extérieur. Le flot de personnes obligées de fuir leur village ne s'arrête pas. Même si le gouvernement a décidé depuis 2023 au Burkina Faso de ne plus publier les statistiques, pour ces 3 dernières années, août, septembre, octobre, des centaines de Burkinabés ont été contraints, sous les exactions des terroristes et aussi des personnes censées les protéger, les forces de défense et de sécurité, de fuir et de se retrouver à Koro et au Mali. Le HCR a avancé plus de 130 000 réfugiés. Ces personnes sont venues principalement de la province du Sourou et des villes de Tiou et de Solé dans la province du Louroum, au Burkina Faso toujours. Hein. Ces personnes fuyant le Burkina pour se réfugier au Mali témoignent du coup que la situation est certes difficile au Mali, mais celle du Burkina est encore plus difficile. Sur les 3 juntes militaires, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, la junte la plus dure avec les civils, notamment la communauté Peul et même toutes les voix qui dénoncent, c'est celle du capitaine Traoré au Burkina Faso. Donc là, on vous donne l'exemple que même dans la fuite, certains Burkinabés préfèrent aller se réfugier encore au Mali que de rester au Burkina Faso, alors qu'au Mali aussi, vous savez, la situation est difficile. Tout cela se passe dans un contexte où le HCR manque cruellement de ressources à cause de la restriction de financement par les principaux donateurs des Nations Unies. Dans cette situation désespérante, il est important de parler vraiment des pays limitrophes, la Côte d'Ivoire, le Ghana, qui accueillent vraiment beaucoup de déplacés. Pour le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire, qui a accueilli et logé décemment plus de 80 000 réfugiés en provenance du Burkina Faso. C'est important de le dire parce qu'il y a beaucoup de programmes qui parlent toujours de prévention, d'alerte précoce. Certes, ces programmes ne sont plus adaptés pour le Sahel central, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. On parlera plus de résolution de crise, mais je pense que tous ces programmes de prévention, d'alerte précoce, il faut vraiment mettre la Côte d'Ivoire et le Ghana, où il y a beaucoup de déplacés qui arrivent, pour qu'ils puissent bénéficier de ces programmes-là, pour éviter la contagion en fait, de la crise au Sahel central. Donc, comme je vous ai dit, la situation est vraiment très inquiétante et je redis encore ce que j'avais dit ici au mois de mai quand on avait échangé et même la suite des échanges que j'ai régulièrement avec Mayana. Je pense que ce qu'on attend vraiment aujourd'hui de vous, votre organisation, c'est comment judiciariser ça. Parce que tant qu'on ne judiciarisera pas, ça ne s'arrêtera pas sur le terrain. On continuera à documenter. Aujourd'hui, il suffit qu'il y ait une simple communication à la Cour pénale internationale qui parle du Burkina Faso, du Mali, du Niger. Vous verrez que sur le terrain, ils auront peur et les choses, les exactions vont diminuer. Et ça, c'est un plaidoyer qu'on mène depuis des années avec beaucoup d'autres organisations, la vôtre comme d'autres. Et je me pose des questions, pourquoi on n'y arrive pas en fait? Et pourquoi certains plaidoyers fonctionnent plus quand on parle de l'Ukraine, quand on parle de Gaza, mais quand on parle du Sahel central, on est encore à faire des fiches de monitoring, faire des tableaux, des courbes, compter le nombre de déplacés, compter le nombre de morts, sans avoir des messages forts comme des messages qu'on a un peu partout en disant il y a des zones, on a parlé de cessez-le-feu. Là, on ne va pas parler de cessez-le-feu puisque c'est ceux qui doivent protéger les civils même qui les touchent. Donc, très simple, cesser les exactions. Donc, voilà, c'est le même plaidoyer, hein, Maniana, que j'ai eu il y a quelque temps. Malheureusement, j'aurais aimé venir vous dire que bon, ben, les choses ont changé. Non, les choses sont en train de se dégrader. Et je réitère ma demande, vraiment qu'on aille collectivement vers la saisie de la CPI. Je vous remercie.
Yes, we'll take the questions after. Let everyone, yes. Okay, I would like to introduce the second panelist, Mrs. Gina Balde, Binta Gina Balde. She is the National Early Warning and Response Officer in the Gambia. Mrs. Balde plays a key role in the early warning and response system that helps identify and prevent human rights crises. Her work bridges prevention and accountability, emphasizing on how timely data and action can protect civilians and reduce violence. She will discuss on the role of the early warning mechanisms and accountability within safeguarding the rights and promoting peace in the Gambia.
Thank you very much, Nima. My name is Binta Gina Balde, Miss, not Miss. Yeah, I am the current governance and human rights analyst at the National Early Warning Response and Mechanism Coordinating Center under the Office of the Vice President. I'll be talking in my capacity as a lawyer and somebody that has a background in human rights and as a citizen of the Sahel. I'll be talking on accountability in the Sahel. We all know that the Sahel has been marred with issues of coup d'etats, droughts, internally displaced persons, terrorism attacks, civil wars, etc. The civil war in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and then we can also talk about the Gambia, wherein we had a dictator for the 22 years. I would not say I am a direct victim, or maybe I was, given the fact that my father was an activist. He worked with the first government and then also the second government, and then later he was imprisoned on several occasions and also was taken to court on bogus allegations that were just false, right? And then he lived in exile for 8 years and died in exile and was denied burial in the country, which was very traumatizing, especially for me. Like I said, I am of the opinion, ladies and gentlemen, that as long as perpetrators of injustice continue to go scot-free, as long as corrupt public officials are not held accountable, as long as nepotism and incompetent people are elected into offices, as long as murderers are working freely and working in our government, then the Sahel, ladies and gentlemen, will continue to experience human rights abuses, corruption, youth unemployment, etc. I, as a lawyer, I believe in criminal justice. And I believe that before reconciliation and before we talk about reparation, we should talk about criminal justice. People need to be held accountable for their actions. And then I believe it is also imperative to understand that accountability, therefore, is not only human rights issues, but security imperative as well. When security officers act with impunity and they are rewarded with indemnity, like what happened in the Gambia in the year 2000, when students went out to protest, and then they were met with force, they were killed, some of them were killed and others were marked for life. What happened was they were rewarded with the Indemnity Act. They were protected. So we don't need to have that. As long as we have those issues, people will go scot-free and then they would not be held accountable. And I'll just go on forward to say that we can only move forward only if we strengthen institutions like, the former president of the United States. Not like he's a great example, but then I'll just say that he said that Africa doesn't need strong men, but we need stronger institutions. Secondly, I believe that punishing of perpetrators of human rights violations. And thirdly, we need to include or mainstream women, youth, and the marginalized, not just as observers, but as part of these accountability conversations. And then I'll also like to see we strengthen our early warning systems. I work with the early warning office. It's in the government. I don't want to go more into details, but then I'll just like to say that what we do at the early warning office is that we monitor, we alert, we analyze threats to human security, and then we end up making reports which are sent to the office of the vice president. And then also we do have third quarterly meetings wherein we sit with stakeholders and then we discuss trends or threats to human security, and then we come up with solutions. These are what I had to say. This is what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miss Binta Gina Balde. I would like to introduce my next speaker, Miss, or is it Mrs.? Miss. Miss Sarata Cisse, first speaker of the Children's Parliament in the Gambia. Miss Cisse is a political science graduate from the University of the Gambia, the first speaker of the Children's National Assembly of the Gambia, and a former female representative at the National Youth Parliament. She currently serves as the program coordinator at Woman Boss, a woman-led civil society organization. Sarata is also a member of the UNFPA Youth Reference Group for West and Central Africa. She is passionate about children's and women's rights, sexual and reproductive health, and rights, SRHR, and gender equality, and has represented the voices of young people at both a regional and international platform.
Thank you, Nima. Greetings, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. It's very exciting for me to speak around children and women's rights, which is a very close topic to my heart, because over the years I've been working with women and children, and it's not working? It's not working? You try this? Oh, are you hearing? Oh. Thank you. So, like I said, issues around women and children are very dear to me, even though we still have persistent challenges going on. And then we remain committed to ensuring that we protect the rights and welfare of women and girls in the Gambia. Over the past decades, women and girls in the Gambia face significant challenges. And we were aware of the fact that different surveys and data have shown that about 28% of girls are married off before the ages of 18. Teenage pregnancies, you have the inaccessibility of sexual and reproductive health services, as well as gender-based violence issues happening in the country. In 2022, we could also recall that there was a study that shows that about 60% of women in the Gambia experience a type of a violence in their lifetime and in their homes. Now, these violences could either be harmful traditional practices such as female genital mutilation. It could also be child marriages. It could also be dropouts of school. It could also be the fact that they don't have equal opportunities to be able to sit in decision-making tables, to be able to make decisions that concerns them and their lives. And that is why when we talk about human rights, I am specific about women's rights. I am specific about children's rights because I believe they form one of the most vulnerable groups in the world, or in the Gambia, for example. And usually when people talk about these things, and I hear people say gender equality, yes, gender equality, but also when we talk about gender equality, for me, we are talking about equal opportunities. If a boy child has the right to go to school, a girl child also has equal right to go to school and access education, because education is a basic human right. Now, if you look at the historical background of the Gambia from 1995, you would understand that child rights has taken a transition, has taken a turn, because with the historical background of child rights in the Gambian context, in 1995, these rights were mostly based on social welfare rights. They were mostly based on infrastructural rights. Now, in the early 2000s, you would realize that these rights have transitioned. They have changed dynamics to ensuring that it is more institution focused. It is focused on reforms. And there comes the Gambia ratifying the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, which was ratified in 2000. And then, because we're talking about reforms, it then enabled us as a country, being a part of the countries that have ratified this very important regional instrument, to now domesticate this to having our own Children's Act of 2005, amended 2016. Now, this is an important milestone to show that children have rights. And because they have rights, it is very much important that they have a specific focus, a specific design framework that addresses just the rights and welfare of children. But also, even though the Gambia has made progresses, the Gambia has made important progresses which we need to acknowledge. The fact that we've ratified both international and regional legal instruments, such as the CEDAW in 1993, the Maputo Protocol in 2005, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which we also ratified in 1990, and the African Charter in 2000. Now, as a country, I think when the dynamics change, when the realities hits, and then we understand that we need to go past 1995, what has been happening. The world is evolving, and we cannot afford to be at the same stage that we are to ensuring that we endanger the lives and welfare of women and girls. Then we decided to domesticate these rights, which includes the Women Amendment Act of 2010, which we have, the Children's Act 2005, amended 2015. We also have the Domestic Violence Act and the Sexual Offences Act of 2013. And also we have other domesticated laws that we have in the country. Now, despite these laws, we have challenges as a country. Now, what are these challenges that we have? We talk about the challenge of implementation. Many girls still face early marriages, not early marriages, but child marriages. We also have limited access to school, especially for rural kids, and also a lot of decentralization issues that we keep on advocating for. Now, also, when we come to sexual and reproductive health and right, we understand that these are specific needs of adolescent girls. And in the UNCRC, Article 12 talks about the fact that anything that has to do with the adolescent without the involvement of the adolescent is not for the adolescent. So it's actually important that anything that we do, we need to have inclusion. We need to have their voices in whatever that we do. And still we go by this because we have, most of these services are not available. Girls, they face period poverty in school. There's no much education around menstrual hygiene, and these are stigmatizing issues within the country. Because you understand that our society in the Gambian context is built on patriarchy, and then there comes the traditional Gambian beliefs, the customs, the values, the cultural norms, where female genital mutilation falls in. The world or the Sahel is aware of the fact that early this year, late last year, there has been a lot of back and forths with government, with civil society actors, with international actors on the issue of FGMC. That is because a parliamentarian or in parliament, they attempted to repeal the ban on FGM, where Section 32A of the Constitution talks about the banning of FGM. And then they attempted to repeal that. Now, with the help of civil society actors, international actors, we came together. We protested, we wrote petitions, we tagged international organizations just to ensure that the dignity of the girl child is protected. Because again, when you talk about sexual and reproductive health and right, you also refer yourself to the ICPD goals. You refer yourself to the Beijing Platform for Action goals. Now, if you refer yourself to these things, which the Gambia aligns with, it's also telling you that you need to allow young girls to be able to make informed decisions about their bodies and not someone else talking about their bodies and how they need to act within society, because it's issue of the genitalia. And we have a lot of girls undergo this. We've seen women that have undergone C-sections when they're given birth, and this is as a result of the harmful traditional practice of FGM, which people still fail to not want to believe it's happening. Doctors have come out, surveys have shown, people have lost their lives during childbirth, fetal bleeding. Just a month ago, we've lost a 1-month-old baby due to female genital mutilation, and the case is still ongoing. We have babies that are weeks old and still taking through the practice of FGMC. And still now we have some people within the traditional Gambian society that still believe that this practice is cultural, this practice is religious. And I always say this, personally, I will not relent, because I am always committed to ensuring that if it has to do with the girl child, and that takes me back to the issue of consent, because I feel the issue of consent is very much delicate, and people don't want to understand the perception around consent and how it works. Because usually if you come up with these things, they say the girl child will consent. But again, the Children's Act or the UNCRC or the UNCRC is telling you a child is anybody below the age of 18. Now, if that is the case, it's also telling you that a child cannot consent. And even whereas you are consenting for the child as a parent, the first important thing that comes to mind is the best interest of the child. And that is why it is very much important that we are having this conversation, to ensuring that we put together efforts to fighting, to ensuring that women and girls remain protected, their rights be at the center of priority because we want to achieve something that goes beyond Agenda 2030, that goes beyond the AU Agenda 2063. We want to achieve a long-term sustainability plan. And if that is to happen, that means that every individual has a role to play because it becomes a collective responsibility upon every person to ensure that they speak up, they fight, they advocate, they involve policymakers to ensuring that young people, women and girls are involved in decision-making processes, not as beneficiaries, but as active partners in people that need to take part in decision-making processes. And this takes me back also to relating it to the various political parties that we have in our country. Because for me, I feel that women during politics would participate, would sing, would clap, would cheer the person in politics, right? But also it is important that we have political party structures that create or gives platform to women to take part in leadership roles and responsibilities. Because if I can cheer for you, I can clap for you, and that makes you win. What if I am the one being cheered for? What if I am the one being clapped for? If that is the case, I am effectively and efficiently able to take up leadership roles and responsibility to represent my voice. Imagine being in parliament. In the Gambian National Assembly, we have 58 seats and only 5 are female. Now, if the issue of FGM, for example, if we would have had more females, you think a male will be in parliament talking about my genitalia and how people should go about it? It's pathetic and weird. So that takes us back to allowing women to take part in leadership positions and also discuss issues that concerns them. You don't tell me how I use my vagina. You don't tell me who is involved in what I do. You need to allow me to make these decisions at my disposal. And if it happens that I am a child, then if you are making any decision on my behalf, you go by the 4 principles of child's right that involves my best interest that comes first. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that powerful message. I'll like to invite my last guest, Mohamed Haidara, President of Amnesty KM Group, Amnesty International Local Groups. Mr. Haidara leads the grassroots human rights education and activism under Amnesty International. His work connects environmental and human rights struggles across the Gambia. Today, he will speak on confronting climate injustice amid governance and crisis, exploring how the climate vulnerability, resource mismanagement, and weak governance deepens inequality and fuel rights violations in the region. He will highlight the need for climate justice and accountability in his parts in as integral parts of human rights protection in the Gambia. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Manyama, for inviting me. I am Mohamed Haider, the current president for Amnesty International KM Group, Cardiff Municipality Group, and also the Secretary General of the Gambia Environmental Alliance. Because to me, human rights issue within the Sahel is way beyond about governance. We all need to understand is because our environment has been tampered. That's why we are facing all this difficulty of trying to adopt. Currently, this year, we have seen that the highest record when it comes to temperature. And we have seen how significant it has impacted the people within the Sahel. Sorry, is the recorder going? Oh, okay, all right. I think it was paying. So before going forward, I just wanted to reflect all of us that we once used to have one of the best presidents. That's the reason why the entire Africa is here today to do the Africa Charter every November. Sorry, every this month of year, which is sorry, October. Sorry. Anyway, I love November so much. So this have really started, by our first president. I believe most of you all know him. That is His Excellency Sadaura Kairaba Jawara, who was a champion for human rights and also a champion for environmental justice. So he used to say this powerful statement, which I will definitely like to read out to you, and which I quote, and it says, "Freedom and justice are the Yes, thank you very much. Freedom and justice are the birthright of all men and women, and the protection of this right is the sorest foundation of peace. It's very short, but it triggers one of the most important things. Freedom and justice is the birthright of every man and woman. Imagine this, and is the sorest foundation of peace. So, but today we live in a Sahel, whereby, first of all, let me start in the Gambia here. In 1981, where our entire global African leaders met in Banjul here to set up the Banjul Charter. Okay, so to set up the Banjul Charter. And then in 1986, the charter came into force to make sure that, which is now well known, called the Banjul Charter. This legacy have really developed one of the most pragmatic strategy to make sure that, because can you imagine, in the post-colonial era, most African leaders were, with the ideas that you still need to control the public. You still need to advocate for, being independent without being truthful to your own people or without being serving your people in in a more dignified way. But our first president understood this concept. He understood that, before you can champion human rights outside, you need to start in your house first. Because even current date, we are still seeing that. We see some African, or you see some global president will speak about human right, moral of human right, the integrity of human right. But in their country, we have the worst human rights situation in those countries. So just narrowing it down to the Sahel, we have seen what have really happened. Today, we sometimes we all met in the forum, we all call ourselves as Africans. But we visit each other country, we have been harassed, we have been bullied, as if we are into another continent. So how do we hold ourselves accountable as a society? And yet still, we wanted to give moral lesson to another country, which we know that even our own country, we are not giving the moral lesson to our own government. So it's very important, it's high time we as an African or we as a human species need to be transparent within ourselves first, then so that the transparent that we are speaking for can be translated to another generation. Just observe ourselves, why all these years of advocacy, it has not yielded more impact? Why are we not asking ourselves, what has gone wrong? One, we have not been consistent. Two, because it becomes something that is personal. Either my parent was killed or my relative was arrested, then that's what might put me into an activism. So the entire accountability stuff, the way I saw it, as I said, all this thing has been triggered. We have to hold ourselves accountable first, then it will reach out to the greater Sahel. So looking at our environmental impact, why it is very key, and it's a key linkage that have really shown that if the environment is disrupted, we will never have the human dignity that we are all calling for. Because the environment gives us the house, gives us the food, gives us the environment, gives us the fresh air we are all breathing. But now we have seen live stream genocide, we have seen live stream war, all these things are suppressing on our environment. We have seen counterterrorism, destroying people trees, destroying people house. We have seen people without document trying to migrate from one location to another, being completely, brutalized, just like the way they killed the entire crops of a certain land. We have seen what happened in Burkina Faso. But the trend is coming. It's not only stopping around central, around Central Africa, but it's now coming within, coming throughout us, like West Africa, those who are in the West African side. Like for say Gambia, we have not experienced something like that, but the trend is just our next door. Even Senegal, the trend is coming. This desert is no more stopping where it used to stop. Even Gambia currently nowadays, those who knows the North Bank area can now attest that we are now seeing desert. We have now seen an entire green cover now being turned into this thing, how to call it, desert. So this interconnection is now forcing people to live in a harsh society, in a harsh weather. If I am living in a society where I don't have green pasture or I don't have enough food to eat, so what do you think should I do? Therefore, obviously, I will migrate from one location to another and look for greener pasture. And we have seen this happening. Any society that is seen that where there is a lot of opportunity, where there is the green pasture is there, then you definitely understand that, you know, having access to some of these things will definitely come on board. But our society have now been neglected in such a way that we do not seem to collaborate, because years of what we have been written, like the strategy that we have written, we all understood that we have one common enemy, that is the climate crisis. And this being our common enemy, we are still negotiating on whether what do we need to do has to be the right thing, or what do we need to do. We already know the solution. One, we know that the Sahel, we are facing what we call, you know, the issue of water scarcity. But what technology are we definitely putting into play to make sure that we can water these lands? We can make sure that our agricultural production can definitely have the water that it needs. These are all part of basic human rights stuff. I think, you know, all since in the morning we are more focused on governance, I want us to focus on ourselves. That's why, you know, I know my statement may not be in common agreement with many of my colleagues, but like this is
We want to give some time to the floor.
okay, all right. Thank you very much. I think I will stop here. I think from there then we can open the conversation, you know, because this is like something I'm so passionate about. I felt like, you know, we need to uh, hit the nail on the head by holding ourselves accountable, because I don't believe in government structure. I believe we are the government. So we make sure our government become a tyrant. We make sure our government becomes a good governance. So that's why I'm holding ourselves very keen accountable in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are going to give time to the floor to ask some questions, and then we'll have everyone to do, we'll have the panelists to do their closing remarks.
Ma question est pour vous. Alors, je voulais savoir quelles sont les formes de résilience qu'il y a maintenant et de résistance qu'il y a maintenant au Burkina. Le micro, il est on. Les formes de résistance. D'accord. Ma question, c'est pour les formes de résistance et de résilience qui existent maintenant au Burkina. Comment ça passe? Comment on peut, nous, par la solidarité régionale, comment on peut vraiment avoir cette solidarité, comment elle peut être efficiente pour venir en aide et manifester notre solidarité aux Human Rights Defenders qui sont au Burkina maintenant, actuellement. Voilà.
Any other questions, comments?
So I will ask questions that I want. My question is for you, Miss. You spoke about like sexual and reproductive violations and rights. Yes? No?
First mic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they are. My question is about, because you talked about sexual and rights, sexual and yes, right, and health, and violations, of course, for kids and children. And we had in Tunisia, we had a lot of discussion about sexual education in public primary schools. I know it's in a Muslim country. This thing is very difficult to achieve and to have as a curriculum in the schools, and it's controversial. So my question for you here in the Gambia, if you have this already, or if you discuss it, or at least civil society organizations are lobbying to have these in the schools, like for kids, but also for teachers. Thank you.
Any other question? Remarks? Yes.
I don't think it's working. You can use it.
Hi, so my name is Ousmane Diallo from Amnesty International Western Central Africa Regional Office. I wanted to congratulate you all for your presentations, and I had a question for Miss Balde, the other Miss, and Mr. Haidara. Like, you're working on very sensitive topics, like you talked about sexual and reproductive rights, and we know that in our countries there is a lot of stress and pressure, especially when you're young, like conservative forces, especially in Gambia. Is there any way, like bridges between your generation and older generations about supporting you and strengthening your work, like in the youth parliament in Gambia? And I will conclude by saluting the memory of Mr. Michael J. Balde, because when you talked, I knew it was him. And so I'm very happy to know that his daughter is here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question before we bring it back to the floor? Sorry, bring it back to the panelists? Okay. Yes, Madam Binta?
Alors, concernant la question... Alors, sur la question que tu as posée, c'est vrai, on se demande comment aider. Je pense déjà, c'est de, comme je l'ai dit, de judiciariser. D'aider à judiciariser, ça serait déjà un grand pas. Et l'autre aspect qui peut être là aussi, c'est de partager déjà ce qui existe à travers le monde sur les réseaux de victimes. L'idée, ça serait que les réseaux des victimes situés hors du Sahel, qu'il y ait une connexion avec les victimes du Sahel et que ces réseaux hors Sahel puissent porter la voix des Sahéliens. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, les Sahéliens ne peuvent pas eux-mêmes prendre la parole. S'ils prennent la parole, ils s'exposent. Mais si on a déjà un réseau au niveau mondial, et je sais qu'il y en a plusieurs au niveau de l'Observatoire Kissal, on avait essayé avec des partenaires d'en identifier quelques-uns. Et je pense que ça, c'est une première piste déjà pour faire un rapprochement avec les victimes sahéliennes, partager les informations et sur les prises de parole, que ça ne soit pas les Sahéliens qui s'exposent, mais plutôt, je ne sais pas, le réseau des victimes au Yémen, en Syrie ou autre. Ça montrerait vraiment un partage d'expérience. Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on essaye de mettre en place au niveau de l'Observatoire Kissal avec beaucoup de difficultés, mais si vous avez des pistes de partage, ou je ne sais pas, de victimes peut-être au Liban ou autre part, partout sur le globe, ça peut être une piste. Des zones où il n'y a pas le rétrécissement de l'espace civique, où on peut encore se permettre de parler, qui puissent prendre la parole à l'ONU ou autre, au nom des Burkinabés, des Maliens, du Niger. Voilà, merci.
Yes, I believe the second question was for Miss Tarata.
You're trying so hard to add Mrs. to my name. So, the other question that was asked to me is the fact that considering some countries are Muslim countries, how do we integrate sexual and reproductive health and right into schools? So first, I would like to, I'd like to say that it was challenging because we are not a Muslim country, like we're not Sharia, right? Yeah. So, but majority, or you have a lot of people that relate certain things to religion, right? And also to customs and traditions. And when we are talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights, you would understand that it is considered a taboo to talk about SRHR issues. And this starts from our own households, where our parents do not even have dialogues with us on puberty, on menstruation. And some parents would tell you that if you start seeing your menstruation, they will tell you, be careful, someone should not touch your breast. They will not tell you if you have sex, you will be pregnant. Don't tell me, you get the narrative. And now what we did was we ensure that we do strong community sensitization. We have some CSO organizations that would go into communities and they will be chased out, you know. But then we remain strong-headed, steady fast, and we knew what we wanted. And now I can tell you for free, you have a lot of CSO organizations that have strong connections with communities in the rural Gambia, and they're very much welcoming and very much excited to see us in their communities, because some of their children have made them so much proud that they've seen the impact of the sensitization that we've been doing. Just some 2 weeks back, the organization that I'm newly working in, I just started working with them this month. We did school sensitization, and we went to a lot of schools, and the principals were so welcoming. The children were so happy. Apparently, even in our systems, you would understand that some of these courses are not taught in details because the lecturers feel that our male counterparts are in the classroom and they cannot talk deep about this. And what we advocate for is positive masculinity, no? So that's a challenge. So the second question that the other so to answer your question, what works for us was community sensitization. We had dialogue with community leaders. Now there's a course that is civic education to educate. It's in schools now to educate young girls about their rights and responsibilities. It's now in most of the schools, and we are trying to ensure that we have SRHR incorporated in our curriculum. Yes. Mhm. Community leaders, the imams, you have the alcalos, you have a lot of community heads that would not welcome the idea. But what helped us was the kids now are resistant themselves, like the children themselves are resistant to this, because now we have put up mechanisms to report matters to police stations.
Yes. Ms. Cisse, could we wrap up the next answer? That way
Yes.
Mr. Hydra can also answer, and then
Yes.
we
Somebody asked a second question. Do I answer that? Yes.
quickly.
Yes, because this SRHR is sometimes crazy. Someone said, talked about the pressure, the stress, and the bridges or gaps, and how we are supported, especially when it's about SRHR. When the issue of the FGM came, we directly interacted with our policymakers. Some of our policymakers, we have their contacts. I personally called, I don't want to mention names, but I called some few people in parliament and I'm like, hey, look, the future of these young girls are in your hands. If anything happens, if any decision you make today, you will be held accountable tomorrow if this bill passes. I was part of the people tagging UN online. I was part of the people in the forefront of the protest. I could remember they formed a delegation reporting me to my mom. But yeah, being strong-headed and all that really worked out for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and the last question was for Mr. Hydra. Yes, we wrap up quickly and then we close for the day.
All right. Basically, thank you very much for that wonderful question. So basically, here in the Gambia, we are so fortunate to say that we have, that synergy of working with, with our elders like veterans, in the sense that the reason why you see Sarah is boldly speaking is because she got all the support that she need from the veteran or the senior or people who are even in power. One thing for sure is that people are scared of losing their political position. That's why sometimes they might not tend to accept the reality. But nowadays that we are so glad that now young people are even now part of the policy making processes to make sure that their voices are heard and inserted in some of these documents. Because I think the reason why we used to have that gap before was that we young people always feel that okay, when it comes to policy, it's only meant for people that are in the political system or in the political political more like a political actor. But now we understood that the real power is not all about advocating on the street. Real power is not all about sitting in the conference, but real power is about being part of when the laws are being drafted. You make sure your voices are captured in those laws. Okay, for us. Okay, no, because of the reason why I'm saying that today, if I am taken to court, I can reference that and say that you said X and Y and Z. Currently, we have young people being taken to mile 2 for peacefully conducting peaceful assembly. But right now, the reason why the government cannot put them into jail for so long is because of the law say that they have right for assembly. If I thought that that clause was not there, so what would be their guarantee? As I always say, we civil society, we don't have weapon. We don't have, what we have is our smartness of how to influence policy to be inserted in the document. That's what gives us the right. Even today, if I'm taken to court, if I can talk sweet talk to win your heart, that's a different case. But when it is not written and is there and it say this and this, that's why we are still having challenge of repealing the Public Order Act. We criminalize people going to going to the street protesting without seeking permit. Right now, that's our biggest challenge. We are trying to see how best we're going to repeal that to make sure that we could have the right that we deserve. Any moment we wanted to have a peaceful protest, we can just simply notify the IGP and take action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and would like to close the session by saying, let us remember that the Sahel's instability is not inevitable. It reflects choices, governance failures, and the absence of accountability. The stories and findings we shared today remind us that peace cannot exist without justice, and that the genuine stability requires protection and the rights and dignity of every individual. Thank you very much. Let's stand and take a photo. Merci beaucoup. On prend une photo.
Should I be on the other side? Oui. Oh, sorry.
Faut que vous vous rapprochez, hein? Voilà. Voilà. Merci beaucoup. Bravo. Bravo.
Miss Balde, you're right, you're right. Good to meet you. I never met him, but I remember like when they denied him burial in Gambia. So because I'm from Senegal, and I remember I was just getting to know about Gambia. Yeah, that's what I was told. Yeah, yeah. So your family is now in Banjul, in Gambia. That's great. That's good. Anyway, well done. Ça va? Eh non, il est bien la petite. Non? Hein?
Merci beaucoup. Merci
Yeah.
beaucoup. Merci.
Elle, son père, c'était un opposant à Jamaïque. Michael Balde. Pour une femme. Parce que il a été contraint à l'exil et quand il est décédé à Dakar, ils ont voulu l'enterrer. Ici, jamais à dit non. Ça avait créé un grand scandale. Non, elle est bien. Hein? Ouais. C'est une courageuse. Oui, c'est Aïdara. Aïdara,